Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to another episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, the snow is melting outside, the temperature is beginning to rise, and thank goodness we've hit the last week of February. That is not the only reason why I'm so plucky for this week's episode. The great thing about supporting a club over the years is when they can still surprise you every once in a while. But before I get to Chelsea's big win from this past week, I want to talk about the Champions League as a whole. I want to start off with this observation. When it comes to telling the story of a player or a team in sports, a good way to often do that is by looking at trends, whether they be numerical or analytical based, like we've seen over the past few years, or pattern related, or just looking at streaks. Trends are a good way to explain why a team is successful or why a team is struggling. When it comes to soccer, there's no better place to look at trends than in the Champions League. It's the biggest stage in club soccer, and it pits the best teams across Europe against each other. Now, of course, the focus is usually on the winner of the tournament. However, it's a great time for leagues as a whole to stake their claim to being the best in Europe. The most interesting league when it comes to the Champions League, in my opinion, is La Liga. I did a little bit of a history dive this week, and I was particularly shocked at what I found in Champions League history. The Spanish League have actually had the fewest number of teams make it to a final across the big five leagues. They've had 4 clubs make a European Cup or Champions League final over the years, while the rest of the big 5 leagues have had at least 5 teams. That's weird to me because, of course, the clear leaders when it comes to titles in the Champions League would be Real Madrid of La Liga, with 13 total European Cup and Champions League titles. It was shocking to me because this past decade was dominated by Spanish clubs. Of the 10 finals, 6 were won by either Barcelona or Real Madrid, including 5 in a row, and there were 2 all-Spanish finals between Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid in there as well. However, over the past 2 seasons, we haven't seen a Spanish side make a Champions League final, and we've only seen one team, Barcelona, a couple seasons ago, make it to a semifinal. And it looks like those struggles in the Champions League have carried over to this year. La Liga sides went 1-3 during the first leg of this year's round of 16. They were outscored 8-4 by their opponents, and all 8 of those goals were scored by the visiting club. Think about it. It started with PSG crushing Barcelona, despite the fact that PSG were missing Neymar and Di Maria. Then you look at Sevilla. They scored a couple goals, but they conceded 3 big away goals to Borussia Dortmund. Then you move on to this current week. You had Atletico Madrid lose to Chelsea 1-0, and then Real Madrid definitely could have lost that match versus Atalanta, had a few decisions gone the other way. They were able to scrape away with a 1-0 victory, but still, they were not very convincing. They did not look themselves, and by the thinnest of margins, they lead going into the second leg. So how can we explain this recent trend of La Liga teams struggling in the Champions League? A large part of that has to do with the slight decline of Barcelona and Real Madrid. With Madrid, Cristiano Ronaldo has left for Juventus, and they haven't done a good job of replacing him with the big-time star. They've had to deal with injuries, aging superstars, and just dealing with the pressure that they put on themselves from season to season. With Barcelona, their big-time purchases have not paid off over the past couple of seasons. Their defense has gotten worse. Their stars have aged. And with Lionel Messi, the potential of him leaving is at an all-time high. When you look at the rest of La Liga, Atletico Madrid, they've got a great system, they got a great manager, but they've lacked the star power over the years to compete with the top clubs across Europe. The rest of the league just isn't on par with those 3 other clubs. So think about this. If Messi leaves Barcelona, much like Ronaldo left Real Madrid, there's not going to be as much interest in those 2 clubs. And if there's not that much more interest in those 2 clubs, there's just not going to be much more interest in La Liga. And if the top sides in La Liga aren't able to reload, will we see them fall in the pecking order when it comes to Europe's biggest leagues? People have always seen La Liga as the top league across Europe because of the success they've had in European competitions. If that's not the case anymore, I fear what that will do to the perception of the Spanish league. So that was my big observation from the first leg of the round of 16. Now, before all you La Liga fans start yelling at me, yes, I know Serie A went 0-3, but I still think Juventus are favored in their tie. I thought Atalanta should have won, and Lazio, well, the odds were just stacked against them. La Liga were tied for the most sides in the round of 16, and they put forth that type of effort. Had to point that out. So let's get into the other 4 matchups from this past week in the round of 16 in the Champions League. And of course, I got to start with my club, Chelsea, taking on Atletico Madrid. And like I said, this club continued to surprise me from time to time, but this had a lot to do with their opponent on this day. Chelsea were able to take advantage of a timid Atletico Madrid and escape with a 1-0 victory thanks to a beautiful bicycle kick from Olivier Giroud. Atletico seemed content to soak up pressure, but Chelsea were able to limit their chances when they tried to come forward. I was shocked by the mentality of Atletico. I know Diego Simeone preaches a defensive-first mentality, But this Chelsea side, despite the fact that they're playing better, they still have a lot of flaws. They struggle to score goals. And in terms of the defense, the personnel out there, they're not world beaters. You're still seeing Alonso, and you're still seeing Antonio Rudiger, and Andreas Christensen was the main center back on this day, and Atletico did not offer much going forward. They got Luis Suarez, they got João Felix, yet they weren't really able to cause much danger on that end of the pitch. With Chelsea, I've been impressed recently. I think they've done a better job of getting the ball to their playmakers. Their playmakers have been taking guys on. Timo Werner's looking better every week now. And, of course, man, that beautiful goal by Giroud. He's been a constant professional for Chelsea. He's been a reliable source of goals. And just to be able to nick one, it was kind of funny because VAR, you're looking at it, you're like, well, yeah, he was obviously offsides, but then you see that Atletico center back actually played the ball back up, and that was what was able to allow Giroud to strike it and score that goal. That's important because it's an away goal. Chelsea have the advantage going into the second leg. Of course, it's a thin margin. You got to think Atletico will have to play more aggressive because they're going to have to get on the score sheet if they want to advance. But still, very impressive effort by Chelsea, especially defensively, keeping Atletico out of their net. And yeah, we'll have to see going forward if they're able to hold on to this lead and advance to the quarterfinals. Next up, Lazio versus Bayern Munich was unfortunately everything people thought it would be. Bayern continued their impressive Champions League form with a 4-1 thumping of Lazio in Italy. Robert Lewandowski opened the scoring in the 9th minute off of an errant back pass, and the goal he scored made him the third all-time scorer in Champions League history with 72 goals. 17-year-old Jamal Musiala scored the second as Lazio were unable to handle Bayern's intensity on the day. Yeah, Lazio didn't help themselves with that first goal, but still, they're overmatched in this tie. Bayern just have too much talent. You got the top striker in the world in Lewandowski. You got a cast of excellent wingers who are just fast as all get out. You got a solid defense there at the back. Yes, Lazio were able to get a consolation goal, but still, they're pretty much out of this tie. 4 away goals is just way too much to overcome, especially when you're going up against the reigning champions. Bayern looking as impressive as ever, and they're basically going to cruise here to the quarterfinals. Up next, while it wasn't pretty, and it probably took longer than it should have, Real Madrid were able to take advantage of Atalanta's Remo Freuler being sent off in the 17th minute as left back Ferland Mendy scored a beautiful curling goal, which was enough to secure the 1-0 victory. Missing several regulars, Real Madrid were unable to impose their will for most of the match, even after going up a man, which is good news for Atalanta, who are just going to be thankful that the result didn't get worse than it did. Of course, the red card was the obvious tipping point in the match. In my opinion, it wasn't a red card. That's Madrid's left back, 20 yards out from goal, at an angle with the defender sort of kind of in the area after the other guy had committed himself. I don't think it should have been a red card, especially early on in that match. But still, Atalanta played fairly well after going down to 10 men. They still had a couple of chances, and they had some good possession. Madrid just had a hard time going forward. They didn't have a big center forward because Karim Benzema was out injured. They played Zisco kind of behind Vinicius and Asensio, and they weren't able to put crosses in the box. They couldn't dribble past Atalanta's, compact defense. It took them a very long time and took, a fortunate bounce off of a corner kick to get it to Mendy, who put forth that beautiful effort. So, yeah, they got the result, but I think Atalanta easily could have won this match, especially if both sides were even at 11 men. I also think Casemiro could have gotten a second yellow late in the match for diving in the box. So we'll have to see going forward if Madrid can get a couple players back for the second leg. It's obviously good that they got this advantage, but I was not very impressed with their effort, especially after going up a man. Atalanta are very much still in this tie, especially if Madrid are still hampered by some injuries and if they can keep the match at 11 all. So interesting match. Unfortunate that the red card kind of played a large part in it, but still, this tie is very much up in the air. And lastly, Borussia Mönchengladbach taking on Manchester City. This one pretty much straightforward. Goals from Bernardo Silva and Gabriel Jesus punctuated a comfortable 2-0 victory for Manchester City over their German opponents. The story of the match was that Mönchengladbach could only get one shot on target as City dominated possession and pinned them back in their own end. And it's not really surprising because of the talent that City have, but Mönchengladbach were one of the highest scoring sides during the group stage of the Champions League, and to see them reduced to basically nothing on the offensive end just goes to show how dominant City are right now. I believe their streak across all competitions is up to 19 matches. They're just on an incredible run of form right now. They are right behind Bayern Munich, in my opinion, in terms of favorites to win this tournament. This was an easy breezy 2-0 victory for Man City, 2 away goals also as well, and they should have no problem qualifying for the quarterfinals. So we made it through the first leg of the round of 16 in the Champions League. And of course, we'll have the second leg coming up here in a couple weeks in March. But now I want to get to some pretty big results from this past weekend that concern the top 5 domestic leagues across Europe. As it happens, there was one result from each of the big 5 leagues that had a huge impact on their respective tables. So here we go, top 5 results from this past weekend, and we're going to start in the German Bundesliga. Eintracht Frankfurt were taking on Bayern Munich. Frankfurt were able to get off to a fast start, and they were able to hold on in the second half to beat the champions 2-1. The loss was only Bayern's 3rd of the season, and it dropped their lead at the table down to 2 points. I definitely think Bayern got caught looking ahead towards the Lazio match. They just didn't seem to be in sync. And Frankfurt, hey, right now they're in a Champions League spot. They're playing some great football, and they seem to have had Bayern's number over the past few seasons, especially at home. They were able to get a couple of early goals in the first half, and then they were able to hold on in the second half. So Bayern losing, I think in terms of clubs across Europe right now, that would be the biggest shock. They dropped points here, and the Bundesliga title race is still on. Next up at number 4, checking in on French League 1. After dominating Barcelona midweek, PSG lacked the same energy and slumped to a 2-0 home defeat to red-hot AS Monaco. The loss keeps PSG in 3rd and now puts them 4 points behind the current league leaders, Lille. This was pretty shocking considering the midweek result for PSG. They're still without Neymar and Di Maria, and Mbappe and co just had a lot of trouble trying to break down the compact defense of Monaco. And of course, then at the back, they leaked a couple goals, especially one that they leaked there. I think it was in the 6th minute, just kind of flipped the game on its head, and they weren't able to really make adjustments and figure a way to claw back. So it's been really interesting this year in terms of in League 1, PSG struggles to stay at the top of the table. They've had to deal with Lille. They've had to deal with Lyon. So this kind of makes for a really interesting race. I would say outside of the Serie A title race, this has got to be the most interesting race in Europe. So again, PSG struggling at home against what I will say is a red hot right now Monaco team. I think they've won 8 out of 9 of their past league matches. So they played a solid side, but still you would expect PSG to handle the business at home. They didn't, and now they've left the door open for Lille and Lyon to potentially nip the title off of the current holders. Coming in at number 3, want to take a look at La Liga and a result that at the time had much more to it than met the eye. After dropping points midweek to Levante in a 1-1 draw, Atletico Madrid followed up with even a worse result over the weekend, losing to Levante 2-0. Despite outshooting them 29-6, Atletico could not beat goalkeeper Daniel Cardenas on the day, and now their double-digit lead at the top of the table has shrunk to 3 points. So Atletico are in a funk right now. They've had a terrible month of February. They just are not generating enough goals right now, and because of a couple injuries at the back, their defense is letting in more goals than they should. Now Real Madrid are hot on their tail. They also have to contend with Barcelona in La Liga, so they left themselves a very thin margin of error and are going to have to find some ways to get back on track, find a new source of goals if they have to, and figure out a way to hold off their other title challengers right now in Spain. Next up at number 2, we're going to talk about the current title holders in the English Premier League. Liverpool made history last Saturday, but not the good kind, as they lost to their Merseyside rivals Everton at home for the first time since 1999. The loss was also their 4th straight defeat in the EPL and their 4th straight defeat this season at home. An early Richarlison strike was paired with a late penalty from Gylfi Sigurdsson, which gifted Everton the 2-0 victory. So Liverpool once again shut out at home. It's amazing to think how much that has happened this season. The defense let them down early. It was a pretty simple through ball that James Rodriguez played in to tee up Richarlison. And then again, Liverpool just did not take their chances. They weren't aggressive enough, and they couldn't figure things out on that end. On the back end, Jordan Henderson got hurt in this match and had to be taken off. That's another huge blow for them. Their captain having to leave now, possibly for an extended period of time. And then again, Dominic Calvert-Lewin came on in the match and opened things up for Everton, and he got that late penalty that Sigurdsson was able to bury. So big result. Again, think of those streaks. I think in terms of the 4 straight home defeats, that hasn't happened since 1923, I believe, for Liverpool. This is an amazing run of bad form for them. They've pretty much played themselves out of the title picture, and now they're really in a dogfight with the likes of Chelsea and maybe a few other contenders for that last Champions League spot. It's going to be interesting to see. Can Jurgen Klopp help pull them out of this current funk and help them find a way to qualify for the Champions League next year? But of course, the number 1 result from this past weekend, we got to go to Serie A. While the Milan derby never disappoints, the latest edition has flipped the current title race on its head. Lautaro Martinez scored his first of 2 goals in the 5th minute, and Inter never looked back as they crushed their rivals AC Milan 3-0. Romelu Lukaku had a man-of-match type of performance. He assisted on one of those goals, and he finished off the match with a beautiful individual effort that has given Inter some breathing room at the top of the table, and so they now have a 4-point lead. We know AC Milan, they've basically led the entire way so far this season in Serie A, but they've had a couple of bad results over the past few weeks, and this one was the worst of them yet, getting crushed by their rivals. Inter have been on some great form. They're getting a lot of goals from Martinez and from Lukaku. And of course, with Antonio Conte at the helm, the defense has been excellent. So it's definitely, I think, going to go down the wire still in Serie A. But now Inter, instead of the likes of AC Milan and Juventus, have taken up pole position there and are the favorites to finish out the season as champions. So those were my top 5 results from this past weekend in terms of the big 5 leagues across Europe. It's going to make for some very entertaining finishes to those seasons. Now I want to get to some soccer in America talk, and I'm going to start off with women's soccer this week because of the fact that we had the SheBelieves Cup. The U.S. women's national team were able to successfully defend their title there. But let's break down each of their 3 matches and how they were able to get to that point. They began their cup defense with a testy 1-0 victory over the rivals Canada. The U.S. struggled to break the deadlock until substitute Rose Lavelle slotted home a shot in the 79th minute, which would prove to be the game's only goal. The U.S. also let up a number of chances at the back to Canada in this match, but Canada were unable to finish them off. This was really interesting start to the SheBelieves Cup for the U.S. They struggled a lot in this match. Head coach Vlatko Andonovski kind of pointed that out. They weren't really able to produce a final ball that would lead to a goal. Of course, then with late substitutes, bringing on the likes of, Kristen Press and Rose Lavelle and all those other players that they've got, just the wealth of possibilities off the bench. They were able to push through finally, and they were able to pick up the big-time win there. But it was interesting to see Canada produce that amount of chances versus the U.S. defense. In the second match versus Brazil, the U.S. got off to a better start when Kristen Press scored in the 11th minute. Substitute Megan Rapinoe added another goal late, and they were able to beat Brazil 2-0. This was a much more comfortable performance from the U.S. They mixed up the lineups just a little bit, but they were able to control the possession once again, but they were able to finish off more chances here, were much better on the offensive end, and the defense was much tighter in this match. In the final match of the tournament, the U.S. women's national team put it all together as 5 different players got on the score sheet in a 6-0 beatdown of Argentina, highlighted by 2 goals from Megan Rapinoe and Alex Morgan's first goal since becoming a mom. The U.S. became the first team in tournament history to successfully keep a shutout in all 3 of their matches. So congrats to the U.S. women's national team on successfully defending their SheBelieves Cup. In terms of the big takeaway, head coach Vlatko Andonovski has a tough decision as to who he's going to take with him to the Olympics, because you see the old guard, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan, they're still putting in the goals, but you also have great young players such as Kristen Mewis who are in form. What about now the new player on the block, Catarina Macario? Where does she fit in? You've got players out through injuries such as Tobin Heath and Sam Mewis. Where do they fit in? This is just a loaded roster, and in terms of trimming it down for the Olympics, it's going to be an extremely tough decision. We're going to have to see, there are going to be some tough cuts. And in terms of going forward, do you want to continue to reward those players like Megan Rapinoe who are still scoring goals, they're still contributing, or do you want to move on? Because you know that probably coming around for the next World Cup, you're not going to be able to count on them. So we'll have to see, but this is a very impressive tournament. Once again, the defense shutting out all 3 opponents. Alyssa Nair back there in goal. And of course, the rest of the defense headlined by the captain, Becky Sauerbrunn, did a fantastic job. The offense got clicking at the right time at the end, and another successful SheBelieves Cup for the U.S. women's national team. So congrats to them. Interested to see going forward who will be making that Olympic squad. Okay, before moving on, I do want to provide a quick NWSL update for you all. The OL Reign announced this week the signing of goalkeeper Karen Bardsley from Manchester City. She played for Man City since 2013. She also has 81 total caps for the English national team, so an excellent veteran signing there for OL Reign at goalkeeper. They also announced the re-signing of forward Ali Long, who was a member, of course, of the 2019 FIFA World Cup winning U.S. women's national team. So again, a couple of big signings there for the Reign. We're going to look to be a major player, hopefully, when the NWSL season kicks off here in a little bit over a month. Moving on to talk some MLS, and unfortunately got to start off with some sad news from this past week. Seattle Sounders forward Jordan Morris suffered a season-ending ACL injury while on loan at Swansea City. Morris was only able to make 5 appearances while on loan with the championship club. Just a terrible break for Morris, who has already had to deal with 1 major ACL tear in his career and now faces another lengthy rehab process. Not going to be able to feature for Swansea or Seattle, and of course not going to be able to feature for the U.S. men's national team as they prepare for a couple of big major tournaments and of course World Cup qualifiers coming up this year. So hopefully Morris, wishing him a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll be able to come back basically the player he was, especially coming off of such a great season for Seattle last year. Next up, I want to talk about some news that broke yesterday. CF Montreal head coach Thierry Henry announced that he'll be stepping down from that position effective immediately. The biggest reason that he cited was not being able to see his kids because of the pandemic. So obviously it's a tough blow for Montreal. They're going to have to do a quick search for a new head coach with the season just a little over a month away. But again, you don't want to be questioning people's physical and mental health right now and dealing with it during the pandemic. It's got to be extremely tough to not be able to see your kids for months on end. Hopefully, Henry, this is the right decision for him. And eventually, in the near future, we see him back in football. And lastly, in terms of transaction news, Inter Miami CF made waves this past week by announcing the signing of former Stoke City captain and center back Ryan Shawcross. Shawcross made over 400 appearances for Stoke City in his career, most of which came in the English Premier League. So on the face of it, Miami are getting a center back with plenty of experience going up against some of the best players in the world in the English Premier League. But yeah, everybody knows about Shawcross. He's got a bit of a reputation for being a harsh tackler, for being a bit of a brute. But hey, Miami could use a little bit of a backbone there in defense. That was one of their major problems last year. So as long as he keeps it clean, Shawcross should bring viable experience and be a force back there for Miami this upcoming season. And lastly, I want to talk about a couple of key transactions from the USL Championship this past week. Start off with Orange County SC announcing the signing of forward Adam John. John made 21 appearances and 13 starts for Atlanta United in MLS last season. He last played with Phoenix Rising FC in the USL Championship, where he scored 17 goals and led them to a regular season title. So that's a big-time signing for Orange County to get a striker with that type of goal-scoring track record in the USL Championship, who's also coming off a pretty solid season for an MLS team. Good to get that type of production in there and hopefully help them out in the Western Conference. Speaking of teams signing forwards, Austin Bold FC announced the signing of two of them from this past week, Jason Johnson and Sean Ugo Okoli. Johnson played for Louisville City FC last season and has previous MLS experience with Houston and Chicago. Okoli won the Golden Boot in 2016 with Phoenix and was Orange County SC's leading goal scorer last season with 7. So a couple of good signings for Austin, especially like that Okoli signing with the track record that he has in the USL Championship. They'll be looking to add plenty of goals and to help out Austin here this season. All right, it's time to get into some St. Louis soccer news. We're going to start off with another former St. Louis FC player signing for a new club. Former St. Louis FC midfielder Todd Wharton signed on with Pittsburgh Riverhounds SC this past week. Wharton was instrumental in getting St. Louis FC to the playoffs last season as he appeared in all but one match during the year. This is an excellent signing for Pittsburgh. Todd has got a tremendous motor there in the middle of the pitch. He's great on set pieces, but of course his strengths are breaking up play and distributing passes. He's one of those guys who may not be one of the biggest voices in the locker room, but is going to lead by example with his play out on the pitch. So congrats to Todd joining up with a great team like Pittsburgh, joins up with his former teammate Russell Cicerone from last year. Can't wait to see what those guys will do this upcoming season. Next up, just want to shed some light on a smaller announcement that St. Louis Scott Gallagher made this week. They announced that they'll be adding a second boys program to the ECNL to make them a 2-program club. Exciting opportunity again to get some more players into a competitive league and continue their development alongside what will be the USL League 2 team coming up here in just a couple of months. So St. Louis Scott Gallagher continuing to improve and expand their opportunities for their players to continue their development and play competitive matches. So in addition to that announcement from St. Louis Scott Gallagher, we also got an announcement from USL League 2 about the schedule for the upcoming season, and we now know the official date for when soccer returns to the soccer park. Tuesday, May 18th, St. Louis Scott Gallagher will take on the Des Moines Menace. It'll be actually the first of 3 home games for St. Louis Scott Gallagher. The schedule is actually really balanced. They have like 3 home games, then they go on the road for 3, then they come home for 3. So pretty even out schedule. Again, multitude of different opponents. They're going to start off versus Des Moines. I saw FC Wichita in there as well. Peoria City. Again, a lot of cool, interesting matchups for St. Louis Scott Gallagher in their first season with USL League 2. But mark your calendars, Tuesday, May 18th. That is the first home match for them in their new league and their new season. So exciting news. That's just a couple months away. It'll be here before we know it. Next up, while the St. Louis Ambush will be returning to play this weekend when they take on the San Diego Sockers, we now know how their schedule next month is shaking out. March will be the final month of the MASL regular season. The Ambush set to play their first 3 matches at home. Due to the reduced schedule, the number of matches required to be playoff eligible has been dropped from 12 to 10, which the Ambush have already played. So again, good that the Ambush have been able to continue their season. It's good that they'll be back on the field this upcoming weekend. And yeah, excellent opportunity with the number of home matches coming up to get themselves in playoff position and to improve their seeding. We don't have any information about the playoff structure yet, but regardless of what it is, the Ambush will look to be big-time players when we get to that point. So to wrap up the show, unfortunately, things kind of fell through with the guest I wanted to bring on this week. I'm trying to work out something with them in the near future. but I thought this was an excellent time to feature some of the work that we've been doing on Atletico TV. On this week's episode, we were able to talk to Phil Grooms, who you guys have seen on this show, and we talked a little bit about the local soccer scene here in St. Louis, and it'll give you guys a pretty good feel, if you haven't checked it out already, on what we're trying to accomplish with Atletico TV. Take a look.
All right, for our next segment, we are honored to be joined by someone who's doing some great work here in the St. Louis area in terms of the game of soccer. He's part of the Beautiful Game Network and the USL show, as well as his own podcast, Flyover Footy, focusing on soccer here in St. Louis. Honored to be joined by a good friend here, Phil Grooms. Phil, thanks for coming on the show with us this week.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm loving it.
I know. Very excited. Again, loved all your work that you've been doing. Of course, you're based locally here in St. Louis. So you got really kind of a finger on the pulse of what is going on around here in the city. And there's a lot of news just over this past week to get to. And I'm interested to bring you in here as another outside perspective to kind of go over it a little bit here. Starting off with something that we kind of got to at the beginning of our show, the announcement from St. Louis Scott Gallagher that they'll be joining USL League 2, kind of a more concrete path to professional development path that they are on, and that they'll be starting to play here in May, with some matches hopefully coming to the soccer park, which I know fans will be very excited about. But just want to get your thoughts real quick about that huge announcement from them.
Well, I think we've all wanted something from St. Louis FC to be playing this year, anything. And we've lost so many other teams, as you guys were just talking about, that I'm just ecstatic that we have something. I do wish it was called St. Louis FC U23 or something. That would be a lot of fun. But the fact that Scott Gallagher has a top team, a team for their younger players to look up to and aspire to play in against grown men. You know, I feel like that's really important, Luis, to have maybe 15, 16, 17-year-olds who can face grown men in the summertime. And I liked your idea of, I didn't think about the fact that we could bring down some college St. Louis players to play in the summer too. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, definitely is excited to have more soccer in the community, and I think Scott Gallagher is bringing that that opportunity again with the folding of STLFC that slightly is getting away. We still, as an academy, obviously we're in the same umbrella, but definitely comes to give that opportunity to players not only in our academy but also for players that have gone through our system. And that's the idea, right? That's the idea, to provide SLSG alumni and bring them back on a percentage. Doesn't mean that all the players are gonna be from there, but it gives a big opportunity for those guys that are in SLU, in Indiana University, that they, when they come in the break, they come here and they're from here, so they come in the break from college, and it's an opportunity, that league, to continue playing because of the schedule of the college season, right?
I think a big opportunity here also is just to kind of give more exposure to these types of players, because I mean, what is a big deal from this past month or so, Luis, is that you guys had alumni drafted to MLS clubs, and for some people who aren't following maybe too closely would be like, well, who's this guy? How is he connected to St. Louis? If you get a team like Scott Gallagher into a league, then it'll be easier to follow these players from the beginnings of their career on their way up through development.
Exactly. It gives that exposure, and also to close the gap a little bit when St. Louis City, because at the end, we're all part of the community of soccer in St. Louis, and even though there's two different organizations, but at the end, I always think the more you collaborate in terms of helping develop these players through their path to go to pro, St. Louis City will be now the pinnacle in 2 years, in 23. So that's closes a little bit of the, not having USL Championship anymore, but it gives another opportunity for those players to continue to develop. And as well, like you mentioned, Phil, some of our guys, they're 16, 17, that we have a few that they could definitely, they're going to thrive to be in that team and, and have those opportunities. And not only playing, but also getting the daily basis environment of, like you say, playing grown men, right? So that's important as well.
Phil, just want to kind of expand on the topic a little bit, talk about just St. Louis soccer culture right now as a whole, because we got the Scott Gallagher announcement. We've seen the unfortunate case that the Lions and Club Atletico are taking the season off, although again, caveating saying they'll be back in 2022, which is important that we're still going to have these clubs and still have this important part of the soccer culture. We talked a little bit about earlier on the show about the St. Louis City Academy announcement with their first invitational trial. I just want to get your feel as for terms of how all these teams are connected, or just any one topic in particular, how you're feeling right now about soccer here in St. Louis.
Well, I thought it was interesting. There was a Lutz Pfannenstiel interview where he talked about how the academy system would work. And it sounds great. You know, just like bringing in all the cultures of St. Louis soccer sounds great. And it's going to be a huge challenge. And so I'll just kind of talk about like what I think ideally in my brain, in the best perfect soccer world in St. Louis would work, is I want to see them working together with Scott Gallagher. I would love, like you mentioned, Luis, the opportunity at Scott Gallagher in USL 2, League 2, for that to be shown to them, for them to scout those players, for there to be cooperation between the two. I do wonder about whether or not there's going to be competition or whether it's going to be working together. Lutz said in his interview that they're going to be working together with all the local academies and all the local clubs, and so there will be this pyramid that hopefully works together. It worked in Hanover. It's a new thing here, and I like his vision, and I really, truly hope that it works perfectly. But I'm thinking about all the St. Louis players at SLU, Indiana University, and all the players coming up. I'm thinking of this all-star academy and an all-star League 2 team that could move into St. Louis City SC. We're all St. Louis fans here, and I would just love to see this system where we're all following guys. We've got these spreadsheets full of St. Louis players from all over the country, all over the world now. And even thinking back to the fact that Josh Sargent played for the St. Louis FC U23s a few times, there's possibility here, and some crazy things could happen. And I want that utopia to come true in St. Louis if possible.
Well, it just makes sense, right? If we say we have this great soccer culture and that we are the soccer capital of the country, and it's correct, we have all these good players, it would make sense to work together, in some way to ensure the fact that no one's slipping through the cracks, that we are well represented on the national stage, and just continue the positive development that has been happening, even if we haven't had the national exposure. And hopefully now, with City coming into the fold, that will take care of that, right? And all these clubs that have been working, the Atleticos, the Lions, the Fire and Ices, again, extending into the women's game, I think would be the next step after this, because again, St. Louis, the soccer culture is not just with men's, it's with women's, and to get that positive momentum there as well would be a huge, big step there. So again, a lot of news going on here in St. Louis soccer, most of it positive, and again, hopefully those teams will come back in 2022, and then of course, once the big 2023 comes around and City comes, we'll be firing on all cylinders in terms of local soccer. So again, very excited with the developments happening here in St. Louis.
If you guys enjoyed that content and you haven't done so already, head over to Atletico TV's Facebook page and give us a like. You can also find us on Club Atletico St. Louis's website, gobluebirds.com, under the Atletico TV tab. That's going to do it for this episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. As the calendar flips to the month of March and the U.S. soccer seasons are almost here, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to put together a great group of guests for you all, as well as some more great soccer conversation. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great weekend.